Welcome to the Ghosts of the Orange Bowl. I'm Jay Rao. Our guest today is part of South Florida football royalty. As the youngest son of Hall of Famer Nick Buoniconti, Marc Buoniconti was on his way to following in his father's footsteps. He was an all-Dade County linebacker at Christopher Columbus High School. He earned a football scholarship to the Citadel. He became the team's starting middle linebacker as a sophomore in 1985. But in October 26, 1985, Marc suffered a very brutal spinal cord injury while making a tackle. The injury left him paralyzed. But shortly after his accident, his father, Nick Buoniconti, and Dr. Barth Green started the Miami Project to cure paralysis, which is now one of the leading neurological centers in the world. And I'm proud to have him as our guest, the president of the Miami Project, Marc Buoniconti. Marc, thanks for joining us.
Jay, it's a pleasure. I love your studio here and got a pretty cool setup.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Marc, I want to go back to the very beginning with the relationship with your father. You were born in Massachusetts. Your dad originally started his career with the Boston Patriots in the old AFL, but he was traded to the Dolphins in 1969 when you were just 3 years old at the time. And by 1972, the Dolphins were undefeated. You were just 6 years old in 1972. Do you have any memories from that year?
You know, when I look back and I think about my dad's achievements in the Super Bowl years, you know, I have a vague memory about the city just going crazy. It was that time when the city was electric. You know, everything was focused on the Dolphins. I remember because I used to go to the locker room, hang out with the players. So definitely as a young kid, I had an impact and an understanding that this was a special team and my dad was part of something really magical. And even though I was young, I still have those beautiful memories of the Super Bowl and my mom screaming about, you know, every play. We couldn't even be in the same room with her because she'd be yelling and screaming at every play. But so yeah, I definitely have great memories, even though I was very young.
I had a chance to read your book, and you talked about in your early years, you didn't have a lot of memories of that time, but you did remember the warm-ups, the days before the games on Saturdays. Your dad would take you and your brother to the Orange Bowl, and you would play around the facility and everything, and you would meet some of the players like Garo Yepremian and Bill Stanfill and people like that. Do you remember those times?
Oh, those were the best of the times because, you know, my dad just like all the kids pile in the car. Let's go down to the stadium on Saturdays. And that was our playground. I mean, we had the huge Orange Bowl all to ourselves, and we'd be on the field playing with all the players, holding the ball for Garo, you know, shooting the breeze with, like you said, Bill Stanfill and Bob Matheson and, you know, Lloyd Mumford. I mean, just all the guys, and they're just such great guys. The Greasy kids. So just being able to have that entire Orange Bowl to ourselves, me and my brother, it was just a fun time.
Right, and you started playing football for the Kendall Broncos, I believe, and you and your brother were very competitive. How did your dad get you started in football, or was it something you just naturally gravitated to?
You know, when I was a little league, I mean, I remember very vividly my dad telling me, you don't have to play if you don't want to. But me and my brother decided to play because it was just a fun time. All the neighborhood kids were there, and it was just a great time. We had so much fun in the Kendall Broncos, and it was very competitive, and we actually did very well, won a few championships growing up.
And you got to Columbus High School, Christopher Columbus High School in Westchester, and you played on some really good football teams. I think your junior year, you played in the state championship game. Your quarterback was Mike Shula, and your defensive end was you played alongside Alonzo Highsmith. What was that like?
Well, let me tell you, that team was stacked. We had the best defense in the county. We're the number one defense in the county. Alonzo playing defense, and I was playing right behind him, an inside linebacker. And Mike Shula as quarterback. I mean, we had a great season. We had a great team. And just because of a couple of mistakes, we would have won the state championship. But that was the best team I ever played on. Those guys, I mean, I still talk with those guys. We have a reunion every few years, and I tell you, that team was a great team.
What was it about Columbus High that was there a certain culture there that just made a great football program? What separated Columbus High, you think, from maybe the average high school program at that time?
Columbus, it's a really, it's kind of corny to say, but it's really a brotherhood. When you go in there, you get these bonds between these guys, and it carries on for life. I mean, I still talk with these guys all the time, and I just think that through the Christian teachings and the attention that you get as a student and as an athlete, I think that's what separates Columbus from most other schools in South Florida.
I was reading in your book when you were talking about your days in high school. You were a different type of kid back in those days. You were very, shall I say, very rebellious. You weren't a very good student. You admitted you weren't a very good student. You didn't concentrate on school. You did a lot of partying. You were a little unfocused at the time. You said you were kind of going through a dark path at that time. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Wow. Well, in all honesty, I never conformed. I had this, and in a way, I still do. I had this, not dark side, but I had this thing inside me that just always likes to push the limits, and I've always done that, and I've tried to refocus that into something positive. I was always probably doing the wrong thing and looking to get in trouble and making wrong decisions, not focusing on school, and just having a good old time. But after my injury, I had to channel that energy, Jay, and that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to take that, not anger, but I tried to take that thing inside me that was always looking for an edge or try to do something to benefit myself. I try to turn it around now to try to help benefit others, and that's why I think with the Miami project, I've been able to do that and turn that negative vibe inside me into something positive.
That's awesome. And you started getting recruited by several schools, but as a linebacker, you were a lot like your dad. You were kind of undersized, and your grades were a little bit. You were struggling with your academics a little bit, but you ended up at the Citadel. And I was wondering how you became a member of their football program.
Well, it was pretty much out of necessity. There was a lot of schools that wanted to recruit me, but when they saw my behavioral, background and my coaches weren't the best cheerleaders in trying to get me recruited, I guess when the Citadel came knocking, they said, "Well, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need." And when you look back and you think about the Citadel, while it's a very rigid and rigorous school to go to, I mean, in all, it really teaches you how to become a man. You're faced with obstacles throughout your whole life. You're faced with decisions that each decision molds you. You don't even realize whether it's a here and now or it's a decision that defines your entire life. But I made the decision to go to the Citadel. It was amazing because it was very similar to Columbus in that you build these bonds with your classmates and your teammates, and because you go through it all together, going through some incredible hardships, but together you make it through. And by relying on each other, you're able to accomplish things that you never thought you would.
Mm, right. And on October 26th, 1985, you were playing in a game against East Tennessee State. There was a 3rd-and-1 situation. And like so many times you've done before, you shot the gap and you hit the running back. But this tackle was a little bit different than what has ever happened before. You suffered a very serious spinal cord injury that left you paralyzed. The running back that you hit that day was a guy by the name of Herman Jacobs.
Right.
I saw a piece on him on HBO, and he harbored a lot of guilt and was going through a lot of depression during that time. And he reached out to you, and you invited him down to Miami, and he became your aide for some time. Is that correct?
Well, it's a long, beautiful story, but yeah, I was actually injured 3 weeks before I got paralyzed. I should have never been on the field. But as a 19-year-old kid, who's going to tell you to get off the field? So I made that tackle. I became paralyzed, and my whole life changed, obviously. My father promised me that he would help get me back on my feet again. That promise turned into the Miami Project, the world's largest, most comprehensive spinal cord research center. And through all in all, years later, we had a reunion at the Citadel. I went back after 20 years, where they retired my jersey. They gave me the school ring, which was unbelievable. But the one thing we kept saying is, you know what? Someone's missing, and it's Herman Jacobs. So we reached out to him. We found him. We invited him to the reunion the next year. And we were there hanging out, and I simply asked him, I go, Herman, what are your dreams? And he looked at me and he said, Mark, no one's ever asked me that before. And I almost had a tear in my eye. But he said, and I was waiting I don't know what I was waiting for. But he said, I want to become a chef. And I was like, you want to become a chef? Not a trainer, not a policeman or a fireman. So I invited him down to Miami, got him an interview at Johnson and Wales. They ended up giving him a scholarship. He came down, lived with me for 6 months, helped me when he could. But after 6 months, he graduated from Johnson and Wales. And I was like a proud parent. It was an amazing story.
Wow. And after your injury, as you mentioned before, your dad helped start the Miami Project with Dr. Barth Green. Can you tell us the relationship of how you guys found out about Dr. Green and how Dr. Green has helped you throughout your life?
Well, Dr. Green's amazing. Dr. Green saved my life multiple times. When I first got hurt, my father, they searched really the entire world. Where should Mark go? Where should we go with the best care? And the name that kept coming up was Barth Green at the University of Miami Jackson Health System. So within 3 days, I was down here in Miami. And it was such a difference because Barth, it's not about surviving, it's about thriving. So the hardest part was getting off a respirator. It took me like 7 months to get off a respirator before I get to the rehabilitation center. And those days were very difficult. But Dr. Green, again, came in my room with my father, and he said, science can do more than build a better wheelchair. We can do something with this, So he talked about, look, if we could put a man on the moon and we can split that atom, there's no reason why we can't cure paralysis. So after the Moonshot Project and the Manhattan Project, that's where the name the Miami Project came, and that's when it was born. Because Dr. Green said, I'm sick of going into families' rooms and telling their loved ones that they'll never walk again. So let me tell you, that's all my dad needed to hear. He was kind of helpless before, but after Dr. Green laid out that scenario, that old spirit of that linebacker came back, and he knew that he had his next challenge. And it wasn't a Super Bowl; it was trying to find a cure for paralysis.
Wow. I mean, over the last 35 years, the Miami Project has grown immensely. You guys just recently opened a new rehab facility at, I believe, at Jackson Memorial. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Miami Project, when we talk about the most comprehensive, the Miami Project, so imagine you have a spinal cord injury. You're going to go to the Jackson Memorial Hospital Trauma Center. Then you're going to go under the care of Dr. Green or the neuroscience team, neurosurgeon team. And then you're going to transfer over to the rehabilitation center, the brand new one, the Christine Lind Rehabilitation Center, which is the most magnificent rehab center, at least in the South. And of course, you got the Miami Project doing the basic research. So really, it's a combination of things that makes the Miami Project an unbelievable center.
You guys have made tremendous progress over the years. One of the success stories that I've heard was Kevin Everett, who was a former University of Miami player who played for the Buffalo Bills. And he suffered, I believe, the same injury that you suffered, right? And he's walking again.
So that was a very unique and excellent scenario about what happened. We have a study that's called hypothermia, where you cool the body down even a few degrees by putting an IV through your veins, and you cool the body down. He was injured. The doctor on the field had been to a Miami Project seminar and saw that if you cool the body down, it could help with the inflammation. So he did that to Kevin Everett, and they weren't even sure he was going to survive. But within like a week, started to regain function, and like 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, he came and walked into the Miami Project.
Wow.
And was able to shake the hands of the people who discovered the hypothermia. I mean, it was an amazing story.
Can you talk about some of the other success stories that you've seen over the years of people that, because of the hard work from the people at the Miami Project, have renewed their hopes that they can walk again? That some people are now regaining their ability to move, at least.
So the Miami Project, I mean, people ask us, when are we going to find a cure? And for a lot of people, we already have. Through strenuous rehabilitative research that the Miami Project does, we do intracranial stimulation, where we stimulate the brain that sends signals down the spinal cord to wake up the circuits in the nerves in the body, and people have regained function. We completed the first ever FDA trial to transplant cells into the spinal cord of paralyzed people, which was the first FDA approved trial to do that. And some of the subjects have started to regain function. We're going to start to add stem cells and other nerve growth factors within that transplant. We're doing a lot of things with gene therapy. We're doing a lot of things with drug discovery, where we discover molecules and compounds that are transplanted into spinal cord that show significant regeneration. So the Miami Project really is a clinical program of translational research, where we take the basic science in the laboratory, translate it to the clinic, and combine that to get people back in the field again.
Wow. And I've noticed that you guys have gotten a tremendous amount of support from a lot of different people, including Tom Brokaw, Bob Costas, the Estefans, and every year you guys do this Great Sports Legends Dinner up in New York. Can you talk about that function and what you guys do?
Right. So this year is our 37th annual Great Sports Legends Dinner. We've honored the best of all sports legends, from Muhammad Ali to Jack Nicklaus, to Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, I mean, you can imagine we've raised probably over $150 million at this event. We're doing it again this year, October 14th. We're going to do it virtual because of the pandemic and the continued isolation. But these events are magical, and hopefully back in 22, we're going to be back in New York doing it live. And it's one of the greatest events you'll ever go to. Yep, Bob Costas will be the MC this year, and we just had tremendous support throughout all the 37 years.
Wow. I want to ask you a question that probably you've been asked a million times, but I got to ask you, do you feel that football, you grew up playing the game. Do you believe that the game is safe for kids to play today?
I've really struggled coming up with what I believe is an appropriate answer. And I got to tell you, the little league, my little league experience was probably one of the best I've ever had. But you cannot deny the facts that are going on now, that continued repetition of hitting your head over many, many years, over multiple plays, is going to cause damage. I've seen it firsthand. I'm actually seeing it in myself for the first time. So while I love Little League, I feel that maybe kids should wait at least until high school before they start playing contact football because of the development of the young child's brain. We don't have enough research to determine whether or not it is safe or not for kids to have head-to-head contact at a young age.
Right. Do you feel that the NFL and the NCAA is doing enough to keep players protected or protecting the safety of the football players?
It's really hard because you're talking about professional athletes. I mean, the game is not forgiving, right? It's a very violent contact sport. There comes to a point when, are we playing touch football? Are we playing professional football? You can't even breathe on the quarterback now, and you get a penalty. That some of these things and some of the plays where defenders come up and tackle receivers and these unnecessary contact. That's where I'm starting to have an issue. I don't think there's much the NFL can do without taking away from the game. So I love the game. I love the how do I say, the energy of the game and the physicality of the game. It's got to be part of the game. I mean, hitting and tackling is part of the game. So I would think the NFL has put enough rules, and they should just let them play.
My final question is, and you may have addressed it before, but how close do you believe we are to getting to a cure for paralysis? And do you think that maybe someday you will be walking again?
How close are we to find a cure? Well, it's impossible for me to guesstimate. But it's not just paralysis, right? So the Miami Project is a neuroscience center. We work on Parkinson's, work on Alzheimer's, work on MS. We're talking about there's a neurological problem in this country that's not being addressed. We need to gather all the organizations together throughout this country and get the federal government to step in and fund these incurable diseases. It's not just paralysis. There are tens of millions of people who are suffering neurological diseases that cost the government trillions of dollars to care for, but yet they're not putting enough money into research. So it's really backwards the way the federal government is treating this. So what they need to do, they need to step in, give $50 billion, $100 billion to the NIH so we can study these incurable diseases such as spinal cord injury and finally find a cure. That would be the best way to approach it. And I'm working with several people. We're going to start at the state level in the state of Florida. I'm going to go across the entire country and get these organizations to help lobby this through their government and get the federal government to step up and fund these incurable diseases such as spinal cord injury, then all of us get back on our feet again.
Mhm. Well, Marc, I want to thank you for joining us. You've been an awesome guest. We wish you very well. And I was wondering if you could please give us some more information on how people can maybe help out with the Miami Project, or how they can learn more about the Miami Project.
Well, of course, you can always go to the miamiproject.org and make a donation. We always have a lot of events like the Great Sports Legends Dinner coming up on October 14th. We also do local events, and just by participating, it really makes a big difference. We get the community involved, we raise money, and we help people get more function back and eventually get out of their wheelchairs. But, you know, we've been very blessed to have the support of the community all these years. And I tell you, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my family, if it wasn't for my friends who are always behind me. I'm able to go throughout this entire city, and it's just everyone's there. They all help me. They all motivate me. And 36 years later, I remember my dad's promise, and he was not able to fulfill his promise before he passed away. But I told him that I was going to carry the torch. The rest of us are going to continue to carry the torch, because my dad was a legend, still a legend, and I'm just trying to follow in some giant footsteps and make him proud.
You're definitely doing that. Thank you so much, Marc.
Jay, my pleasure.
Thanks. I'm Jay Rao for Miami's Community Newspapers, and we'll see you again soon with another ghost from the Orange Bowl.